Okay, now I'll start talking. So last time I did this, once I closed the file, I was not able to reopen it. So this time I'm actually going to record a walkthrough of the data set so that we'll have a record of it before we close out the file. Let's zoom in so that we can see as much as we can. Okay, this is the Riverside Kirby Medical Office Building. You can't see those data yet, so I'm going to format this axis and make this text like quite a bit bigger, maybe bold. Okay, good enough. Good enough. Riverside Kirby Medical Office Building loads. We're going to walk through the loads here prior to closing this file or saving this file. These are all interior zones, so I have the data sliced for interior zones, and we're only looking at loads that occurred 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., so 17 being 5 p.m. And what you're looking at in the chart here is a design load, which will always be shown in red. And spoiler alert, it'll always be higher. And then what we'll see is a maximum cooling load. Well, I should talk through this. The middle one here is the median load that was incurred during all of our observations. Then these two lines represent one standard deviation around that. So ostensibly 60% of our data should be encompassed between those two lines. And then these two lines represent two standard deviations. So that's that, about 99% of our data is encompassed between those two lines. And so for each one of these, I will read out the maximum cooling load, which is this top line here. So 99% of all points will be below that. And then the maximum heating load, which is this bottom line down here. And then probably read out the design load for each one. So let's talk about amenities. We had two zones of amenity spaces. I wonder if I can kind of squeeze these so that we don't get that effect every time. Okay, so we had two zones worth of amenity spaces. It looks like our maximum heating load is 9 BTU per hour per square foot. And our maximum cooling load is about 10. We were designed at 28. And in the individual zones, we'll see, looks like this one went up as high as 12, up and down as high as 12. This zone was tighter, up and down to 5. So all in, it was that 9. Let's look at the biomed equipment. Biomed equipment, we only had one zone. So we're seeing a heating load of -6.5 and a cooling load as high as 9.5. Notice that those both happen in the morning hour. This is the MRI control room. We only had one zone there. Well, obviously, we're designed at 20 BTU a square foot. The maximum load we ever actually see is about 7 or 8 BTU per hour per square foot. We do still have heating load in there, so we need about 3. Exam room, I'm not sure why this exam room and this exam room are separated from each other. We should look at all of those together. And so in this case, we had quite a number of zones within there. Maximum heating load is 6 BTU a foot. That's this line down here. Maximum cooling load is 10. And let's just cycle through the zones here. That one's 4 and 5. This one is 5 and 7. This one is 3 and 5. This one is 3 and 5. This one is -20. This one has some real heating hours that happen there, right? And some big cooling hours too. This one looks like it has some real cooling load, gets up to 10. This one gets up to 8. This one gets up to 12. This one gets up to 10. This one gets up to 20. So this is a bit of an outlier zone here. This one is up to 7. This one's up to 7. This one's up to 12. 6, 8, 9. There's a 9. There's a 5. There's an 8.6. There's an 8. There's a 5. There's a 5. There's a 9. That one was big. That's a 15. That's a 5. That's a 10. That's a 6. And that's an 8. So again, the whole data set, 10 looks like our 99% data, and then -5. Okay, general storage spaces, we only had one zone there. Group room, I think we only have one zone there. It gets as high as 18. Here's an imaging room. It looks like we have 2 zones worth of imaging room. We're seeing loads as high as 14, and in the set we're seeing basically the same. So that's imaging rooms. However, I would say this ultrasound room and this mammography room should both be kind of similarly sized. If we look at all the imaging rooms together, looks like we're looking at 13 and -5. Let's cycle through these. There's a 14, there's a 9, there's a 7, there's a 13, there's a 13. Yeah. So those are all the imaging loads. The injection room, we just had the one zone here. Up to 11, here's the med prep rooms. We did have 3 zones worth of med prep rooms, getting up to 7. So that's that. Office spaces, we should have quite a few office spaces. Oh, actually, not a lot of interior office spaces. I'll do a separate video for the perimeter zones because I have to retool the pivot table. We see an average up to 11 here. We'll cycle through the zones. There's our high one, that's a 13.8. Here's the 11.5, 9.2, 4.9, 10.4. So all in, looking at 11. Here's procedure rooms. These ought to be interesting. They are all interior zones. I don't think there's any perimeter procedure rooms, but our load not very high on a per square foot basis. Let's cycle through the zones. I got an 8, I got a 5, I got another 5, got another 5, and I got a 6. Not bad. The screening room, I think we just had one of those. Storage rooms. We could put those together. There's no load in these. Testing room, which I can't. Oh, there's 3 zones there. Thinking really these should get lumped in with those exam rooms, right? The testing room. I mean, overall, we're looking at a 9, a 7, and an 11. I guess they're self-standing. They are a little higher. Here's a treatment room. We just had one of those. Maybe we'd lump treatment and testing. If you lump treatment and testing and exam all together, then you wind up with a pretty good population of rooms here, and the number's about the same, right? 10.1. Vision Essentials is essentially a shop. That's retail. Yeah, and we see some higher loads in there. So 22. I hope you've been noticing the whole time along that the design loads that we see in these spaces are generally, kind of significantly higher than anything that ever actually occurs. It is grabbing the maximum design loads for the associated zones. And then to me, what's interesting is to take everything together and look at where we actually stand. in terms of load. So overall, we should be designing for 10 BTU a square foot of cooling load and 6 BTU a square foot or 7 BTU a square foot of heating load. Okay, I'm going to stop this recording. We've cycled through all of this data. I'm going to save the file. We may never see this file again, so we'll see.